Hello, I'm Dale Neal. I'm one of the international directors of ICCC, and I'm serving as host for this series. It's my pleasure to welcome to you the second portion in the series, which we have entitled, You Can Start a Business. Our topics for this series are why go into business, spotting business opportunities, getting started, keeping going, first steps in marketing, managing money, organizing for growth, efficient operations and production, business ethics, and staying in business. At this time, I'd like to introduce our tutor for this week, Mr. Lawrence Holt. Welcome, Lawrence.
Thanks, Bill. Nice to see you again.
Good to have you here. Take just a moment and let us know what part you're playing in this process.
Certainly. My role is as chairman of ICCC's International Teaching Committee. And our job as a team of people is to develop training and teaching materials for those in business. And that's why I particularly have been asked to put together most of these programs. But I want to emphasize right at the start, it's certainly not just been me or Dale. We've been working with people from many different nations to put together this series. What we've been trying to do is identify basic truths or principles. Principles that you can apply with confidence. Because they work and they don't change. We believe it's possible to do that because business is about relationships. It's doing deals or trading with one another. And if we can base that on good, sound, moral and ethical principles, then we believe we've got a sound foundation for developing a business. The second objective we've had is to also make the series international. So, having developed fundamental principles or identified them as we see them, we then sought to see examples of where that's actually worked in practice. And to that end, we've looked at businesses in the Philippines, in Manila, even in Russia, in North America, in Western Europe, West Africa, Australia. You're going to meet people, people who once were maybe the place where you are today. They have started a business and found the ways to make that work successfully.
In addition, we have provided a study guide, and we want to introduce it at this point and let you know that it will be available through the people that are bringing you this programming, and we would encourage you to make it a part of your learning process. We believe very strongly that it's not just what we share here on this programming, that the written content of that's important, but it's how you put it to practice. Just as last week, we would encourage you this week, as we will every week, to take this out into the street, put it to practice, make it something that becomes a part of you, so that it will change and make what you're doing reality instead of just something that you've learned or saw in a program.
What Dale was saying in terms of action learning maybe needs explaining a little bit. Let me give you an example. Let's assume that Dale's been to university, he's worked very hard for 3 or 4 years, and finally he's graduated. He's passed his exams, and the Vice-Chancellor or the President of the college gives him his certificate. But that doesn't yet make him a businessman. He may have his piece of paper, but he's not a businessman until he's got a business up and running. This is what we mean by action research. Our hope is, in this series, that out of it, your piece of paper at the end of the day will not just be a certificate, but it'll be a live business up and running.
Let's get started.
The topic for this week's program is spotting business opportunities. Last week we started to look around us and see if we could see any opportunities for doing business. This week we're going to find out how to distinguish real from unreal opportunities. We need to work at it, but it is worth it. Remember, the plans of the diligent lead to advantage. We're going to analyse the information we gathered last week, keep the good and throw away the bad. And let me say one thing. We mentioned at the beginning of the programme that we were looking for fundamental truths, and we've already mentioned one. The plans of the diligent lead to advantage. Our learning objectives this week are that we should understand a little bit about market research, the analysis of that market research, how to define a product or service, identify the particular market sector or niche, establish price levels for that service, and also understand the different types of competition or other businesses that are working in the same field. Before we press on into those details, you probably need to understand a little more some of the terms we're going to use. Take marketing. Marketing is a very important aspect of management. It's the process which is responsible for identifying and anticipating customer requirements at a profit. Good marketing involves making sound decisions so that what's being sold is actually what the customer wants to buy. Market research is a structured approach to gathering data, analysing that information on the marketplace, and then identifying suitable opportunities for business development. Market research typically covers 3 segments. You can see on this diagram, we first of all look at economic development, which covers things like the general economic development in the nation or region, political factors, is it supportive to entrepreneurial business development or not, technological factors, demand and growth rates. We need then also to look at the competitive environment, the profitability, what are the marketing and sales skills that are employed in that field, what sort of sales follow-up do companies offer, success and failure factors, why are people winning, why are people doing well, or why have others failed. We need also to look at new and old competition, a track record. Thirdly, we need to cover what's called the market environment. What's the total capacity of the marketplace? What sort of turnover and margins do companies achieve? And what sort of trends can we see? What sort of needs are emerging? Such market research activities involve personal contact with potential customers and ideally include some sort of structured questionnaire. This makes sure we get a consistent approach to what we're doing. It also helps us evaluate the results of our work. When you're considering the competitive environment, look especially for any maverick companies. What we mean by this is something that's unusual, something that's different, something that might be seen to be swimming against the tide. I remember for some work I did in the United Kingdom some years back, we were looking at the timber import business, and we spotted a very interesting maverick. Most of the companies in that sector were buying sections of a forest. They were sending out their buyers to Canada, to Sweden or to Russia, identifying a section of forest that was attractive to them, buying these trees, and then they were being imported by ship, stored in depots in the United Kingdom, finally stripped of the bark and then sawn up into timber. And eventually, maybe after several months, the timber would arrive in the furniture manufacturer's, the builder's yard, or wherever it was going to be used. What this little company was doing was going straight to the builder, straight to the furniture manufacturer or the caravan manufacturer, and saying, tell me, how many pieces of 50mm by 100mm timber do you need each week? What sort of length do you need? And we'll deliver it to you. We'll deliver it straight to your factory on a weekly or a monthly basis, depending what your needs are. And of course what this company had done was to cut out a very long process of shipment, of timber lying on dockyards, staying in storage yards before it was actually used. The neat thing about this was that in terms of capital lockup in that whole process, there was a lot of money being saved. Now the purchaser could pay one day and 48 hours later he had the timber in his factory or in his works. Previously, the major companies in the sector had maybe had money tied up in that timber coming through the system for several months. This was a maverick, something different, and it showed us some new potential for business development. So that's the sort of thing I want to make you be alert for while you're doing this market research. You may ask, why do we need good marketing information? Good marketing information enables those planning a business to reduce the risks involved, to determine consumer attitudes and requirements, to monitor the whole business environment, and at the same time coordinate their strategy, and also identify particular issues they need to include in their business plan. And last of all, it helps us identify sectors in the market which could provide profitable operations. It's time to consider more action learning. At this point, it's important not to fall into the trap of analysis paralysis. It's unlikely that you're going to be able to gather information on all of the topic areas mentioned. Some of the information may be more intuitive, it's just something you sense or feel. It'll have been obtained simply by observing and listening to what's happening around you. Let me give you an example from my own experience currently in the United Kingdom. If we look at the area of management development and training, then government is currently supporting that sector. It's offering a program called Investors in People, whereby companies get support for training their staff. In addition to that, there's a lot of interest in personalised training. People more and more want training programs that actually help the individual. And at the same time, there's increasing pressure in the workplace for less time to be spent on training. So typically people want programs that only run for half a day, or even better, self-study materials, CD-ROMs and videos, things they can study at home. If we add to all of that the fact that privatisation is a strong theme in our current government's policy, which is encouraging lots of small businesses to get underway. This means more people are facing new challenges, more people need training. So by this simple analysis we can say there's clearly potential for business development in the area of training and management development, purely because of these general trends and developments. But at the same time, we need to be aware or open to new ways of doing this, CD-ROMs, videos, self-study programs, and so on. I hope this gives you an example of just a simple way of observing what's happening, can give you an idea for trends and the way you might spot a potential area for business development. Research in our local area starts to get really interesting. You'll be meeting people face to face, talking to anyone who might help, especially potential customers and those in the same business. Often it's easier to get initial information from potential suppliers because they'll want you to be a customer of theirs eventually, so they're interested in your success. They'll not only be helpful, but they also have a lot of knowledge of the local market. Finally, you need to be prepared with some sort of written questionnaire. This doesn't have to be complicated, but you need a way of not only asking the same questions so you get consistent information, but also registering people's answers. And don't forget to mark on that who you spoke to and at what time. Now, let's have a look at how some people have carried out market research in practice.
My name's Dan Daniels. Started a business back in 1986 with just an idea of a reusable sharps containers. We went from that into medical waste and a few other businesses. Now that company is a $10 million company. We employ about 80 people, and we operate in most states of Australia and also New Zealand. I had a vision for starting a business, and the opportunities arose where a friend of mine came up with this idea of making sharps containers for hospitals, and looked at it seriously, and we found that there is a niche in the market that's missing. There was a lot of sharps containers on the market, but there were none that were good enough or at a reasonable price. So we decided to make a very good sharps container at a reasonable price. Our main focus in business is medical waste and servicing hospitals. We service probably 80% of the hospitals around Australia. We're the largest medical waste company in the country. When we started, we were one of 50 sharps container manufacturers in the country. Now we're only one of 3.
My name's Lorenzo. I'm the Managing Director of City Software. The company began 5 years ago and has grown to be the largest mail order business in the nation. We now currently turn over $10 million a year in revenue and supply business software to businesses. While I was at university, I was asking myself what I'll be doing afterwards, and an opportunity came up to work with my uncle in Germany, who was doing a similar type of business over there. This was back in the days when software products were just being developed for PCs, and I saw that business grow from nothing to about a $1 million turnover a month out of a cellar in a house. And I thought there seems to be quite a growing market for that type of thing, and a young market, and it seemed interesting.
From my experience, lived here for 25 years, when I first came here, my mother couldn't find any Chinese groceries. So it was very difficult for her. So with 25 years of experience, I understand a lot of the Chinese needs. And apart from the Chinese cash and carry here, the groceries, we have the restaurant, we have the Chinese bakeries, and other shops inside to cater for the needs. This is where my idea of the business actually comes into, realizing that several thousand will be coming here. They will be needing accommodation, housing, basically a relocation of all their needs. Apart from housing, there'll be schooling, doctor's surgery, obviously businesses, work, etc. So the whole idea and concept here is to set up a whole network to cater for the needs. And being here, as you see, this is the Wing Yip Center, which is founded by Mr. Yip, a Chinese entrepreneur. He can foresee many thousand will be coming through this area, being just outskirts of London, which we cater for Chinese needs in their groceries. Obviously, one of the most important aspects in Chinese living is food. Basically, I'm catered to help them in every aspect of their lives, from catering, electrical appliances, everything they need in a home.
What we're trying to do now is to see if there are any real business opportunities. There is potential for a business development when you've identified a real opportunity to serve your neighbour to his or her genuine benefit. Some of those benefits might typically be a lower price, better quality, faster delivery, or production. Knowing who our customers are is vital. It impacts on our sales literature and affects the methods and quantities of delivery. It affects credit terms and many other factors. Let's look at some examples. If, as a general rule, you sell to trade customers, then they'll expect credit. If you sell to private customers, then they'll expect to buy for cash. Similarly, if you're selling to the trade, then larger quantities, bulk deliveries are involved, but normally at a lower margin. Whereas if you're selling to private customers, normally you can expect a higher margin, but often are dealing in lower quantities. So it's important we understand exactly who our customers are, because this is going to have a big impact on many aspects of your business, particularly cash flow. Let's have a look now at how some people have analysed their competition and made the sort of decisions we're talking about.
Then I asked myself, what does the customer really want? And that was derived partly out of looking at the large companies in the nation. and also out of asking customers and just basically looking at businesses and asking them, well, if you bought software, is there anything that you would rather have in a service that would be better than you're currently getting? And I looked at what products were being sold in the marketplace as well, what prices the products were being sold for. I made an estimate of the volume being sold in the marketplace, primarily from suppliers by asking them which are their main products that they're selling, found out what prices I could buy it at. But primarily, you need to have a service that is going to work and meet the needs in the marketplace of that product group, and that needed to be identified first.
I found that all the toppings available in the market were all imported toppings. Nut crunch, dessert and ice cream topping is made with local raw materials, cashew nuts and sugar, and thereby freely available, and it suits the average customer as opposed to the imported toppings.
We've now reached a delicate stage in the conception of our new business. After all the research we've been doing, we've started to sense an opportunity. We should have in our mind's eye a picture or a vision of what we might do. The need now is to take a long, cool and careful look at the facts. What do we have? What resources have we got? What can we do? What do I want to do? What's the motivation in my heart? And particularly importantly, what's it going to cost us to get started? It is written, which one of you wants to build a tower and does not first sit down and count the cost to see if he has enough to finish it? And that's equally important when we're starting a business. There's going to be quite a lot of pain, certainly a lot of hard work, a lot of commitment, not only from yourself, but maybe from your friends and family too. This evaluation is absolutely vital, but there's also a danger, because as we go through the analysis of the facts and figures and maybe look at the competition and so on, sometimes we can lose our vision. We can start to lose heart in the midst of all this practical analysis. Keep dreaming. It's often said that success is 10% inspiration and 90% perspiration. An example comes to mind from Sony, the people who developed the Walkman. Apparently Morita, who was the boss of Sony at the time, for a long time felt this was a really good idea, but the market research they did didn't support this. And even his own managers said it's an unworkable idea. Yet Morita pressed through, and today we see them all around the world. So vision, hanging on to your vision, is very important, but at the same time it needs to be balanced with a solid, careful, cool look at the facts. Our vision is what keeps us going through the valleys of despair, through those difficult times. And our whole aim this week in this program is to bring you through a structured process of analysis to where you might have a vision or some concept of the business that you can start. We describe this as a business idea. On the board here, we've got a simple model. It says, if you have a product which you want to deliver to a particular market, then that's got to be supported by a particular organisation or structure. And a good business idea will join those three things together in a harmonious and a mutually supportive way. Think of Mei Mei, the lady from Hong Kong we met earlier in this programme. A simple concept. She had a market, which was people moving from one location to another, in particular Hong Kong to the United Kingdom. People who were changing home completely, leaving everything they had and buying a new home in the United Kingdom. Her idea was simply to provide them with all the support they needed, not just a house, but carpets, furnishing, plumbers, even dental and health care, schools for the children. A simple concept, organisational structure that wasn't very complicated, just herself, supported by one or two colleagues. You too need to look around and see how you can see those three parts coming together. The market, the product that you want to provide, and some sort of organisation to deliver that.
So in conclusion, as we explained in the first session, apparent shortages of resources or the gap between our hopes and plans and the existing marketplace will constrain us, but should not necessarily stop us. There's an old book of Proverbs that tells us, a good man falls 7 times, but rises again. So what we want you to do before we see you next week, do your own market research. See what market opportunities you can spot. Maybe you'll have a new business idea before we meet again. So see you next week.